Dave's 5 Hot Takes, yeah! Hey guys, welcome back to Dave's 5 Hot Takes. This is an exciting episode today because we're doing a Q&A episode. And I was really excited about doing this. One of the reasons I was excited about doing this podcast was to have some kind of different episodes. And this is a different episode. This is not just me rattling off some hot takes. I asked all of you guys and gals to submit some questions about music, anything I could help you understand or we could talk about, do a little bit of a deeper dive on some specific questions on things, musical things. And this is what we got. So we got 5 questions today, or 5 musings that I'm going to sort of speak to and or answer, or try to come as close to answering as I can. I'm so excited about this episode, and it was really fun doing the research to sort of try to answer all these questions or address these thoughts. So thanks so much for sending them in, and now let's get down to it. Hot take 1. So we're just going to jump on in here. Let's just have some fun. Let's see what happens. The first question is by Mandler on Instagram. Pretty sure it was a woman, even though it sounds like a male wrestler. Mandler, don't let the Mandler get his hands on you. And she asked a great question. She said, the first 30 seconds of One Headlight by the Wallflowers absolutely slay me. Is there anything unique or interesting going on there? And to your question, Mandler, there's a lot of things that I think are unique and interesting. I think that have to be a bit of a hat tip, first of all, to the producer of the song, who is T-Bone Burnett, who is a genius. He produced Oh Brother Where Art Thou. He produced August and Everything After by the Counting Crows. He's produced a billion records, Raising Sands by Alison Krauss and Robert Plant. This guy understands space and music and sonically how to get things to fit without it sounding like a million things are happening once, which I think is a little bit of the secret of the intro. So one, we got to talk about T-Bone Burnett and just how he knew to not just go in. So one thing that's interesting about this song is it's a dum da da chum da da dum da da chum da da dum da da chum da da dum. That's sort of the vibe, right? He could have just been like, all right, guys, let's kick it in. Flacom, boom, da da chum, da da dum, 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 da da chum. He could have just done that from the beginning. But he does this thing where, so here's actually what's happening in the form. You have the guitar part, boom, boo, noo, bloom, boo, noo, flackadoom. Then the guitar goes away. So the guitar doesn't stay in. The guitar goes away. Then you have the drums and the bass. Boom, da-da-jum, da-da-dum, da-da-jum, da-da-dum, da-da-jum. Then that guitar like, and there's a little bit of an organ back there. And then it has that guitar comes in. Then it's kind of mirroring what the bass is doing. And I'm assuming what his right hand might be doing on the low tom, that sort of gallopy, horsey kind of thing. And then you have the guitar like, and then there's a big organ, woo, and then you have the guitar doing that lead lick, which all that sounds like a terrible Bobby McFerrin album, me doing all these instrumental things. But so again, it's guitar, then the guitar goes away, the drums and the bass take it for a minute, then there's a guitar lick that introduces the organ in a very small pad of an organ and guitar lick. Then there's a chucky guitar, then the guitar lick comes back in, then a big organ that fills a lot of space with the lead guitar lick really playing the lead line. And so I think that's some of the magic. If you're asking me, I think the magic is that the band just doesn't all come in at the same time. And not only do they not all come in at the same time, they each come in and then some back right back out. So the guitar starts a song and then it disappears. Comes back in, does a lead line, it disappears again. And so you have an organ that's kind of small and then it gets really big. And so there's this sort of like gentle introduction to this song. And then I think really what you have to talk about when you talk about this song is the drummer Matt Chamberlain. And Matt Chamberlain is a drumming legend. I grew up, playing drums, and I couldn't be a bigger fan of this guy. And to give you some context for who this guy is, he played and really became famous for playing on Fiona Apple's Tidal, which was, in the music world and all of my friends, it's one of the most amazing sounding records. But the drumming on that record was revolutionary. I mean, he has literally played on about every record in the history of time since then, from John Mayer, Eric Clapton, Frank Ocean. I mean, in country circles, he's Martina McBride. He's done Mac Miller, Laura Marling, Faith Hill and Tim McGraw, Josh Groban. The guy has literally played on Elton John, Carrie Underwood, Shania Twain, and I'm reading these, don't be impressed with my memory, Chris Cornell, Bruce Springsteen. The guy, he's a legend. He is truly an artist. He's a artist on the drums. He plays the drums like an artist would play the drums. He's not just playing the drums, he's playing them very lyrically and beautifully. So I think this song was a coming out party for this guy. He became kind of a legend off of this, and I remember knowing this in drumming circles. Like people just raved about this and how amazing that drum track was and the rhythm track was, which I think is a huge reason that song works. And I think it's a huge reason the first 30 seconds, 25 seconds works is because that bass and drums, what's happening is so substantial. It's just locked in and rocking. And so I think the first 25 is cool because you kind of get doing it, and then the drums kick in, you're like, ooh, that's nice. And then slowly but surely the song starts, and then it really starts. And you just feel like it's sort of like he's revving the engine, the band is kind of revving the engine. And then once it takes off, it just sits and it never changes. A friend of mine told me the other day that I don't think a cymbal is played. John McLaughlin told me that he never hits a crash cymbal in that song, which I think is true. Uses his hi-hat for the, that kind of stuff, but it's incredible. I mean, it's one of those songs that a lot of things coalesce to become amazing. Not the least of which is how the song starts and how it kind of there's this beautiful sort of gentle lift off into the stratosphere, and then it never lands. It's a beautiful, amazing song with a really cool intro that's so artistic and spatial and open, and then it just locks into a groove that just won't quit. It's amazing. Hot take 2. You guys are killing these questions. Question 2 is just as much fun as the first one. Drink63 sent in this question, which says, Drink63 on Instagram. I should say his name is not, or her name. Its name? I think it was a he. Drink63. Isn't it great that the chorus for the song Baker Street is a sax solo? Any other songs that do a similar thing? So Baker Street is that song that's ba-da-doo-doo-doo-doo, ba-da-doo-doo, but should-a-doo, ba-da-doo-doo, a great song by Gary Rafferty. What a great song. What a good song. Kind of like two songs, actually. It sort of feels like one song is the stuff he sings and another song is just the instrumental, but I digress. So the chorus, again, the qualifier for me is, what is a song where the chorus is not sung but is played on an instrument? So whatever the melody is, it's not sung, it's played on an instrument, which is a very strong qualifier because there's a lot of close calls that I'll get to in a second. So let me say this too. I did a deep internet spelunking on this and found a list with these in a really great forum that was fun to scroll through a billion pages. So I sort of condensed it to the 2 or 3 that I thought were the most relevant and the ones that everybody would kind of know because there were some deep cuts on there. But so I would say the ones that are the pure, like they answer this question truly in that it's just instruments that are doing the hook, is Sultans of Swing by Dire Straits. Ripping bass and bush, so that's a song where the hook is the chorus or the hook. That's what I mean by that. The chorus is singable part, the part that like when somebody goes, what song is that? Usually sing that part and they go, oh, I know that song. That it's just on an instrument. There's no singing. He's playing on his guitar. Fun fact about Dire Straits, they're kind of that band that growing up I didn't get it all, and then once I hit like 25, I loved them. I don't know if you guys have bands like that. Steely Dan was kind of that for me. Steely Dan's in my top 5 bands of all time now, but something about them growing up, I was like, I don't get it. And then it was like, I don't know if I had like the right kind of pizza one night, and all of a sudden I heard Sultan Swing, and I was like, this band is incredible. Mark Knopfler is a genius. So Sultan Swing. 2, The Final Countdown by Europe. Skidadoo-doo, sananintadoo, shidadee-doo, mamanakakoseho, shidadee-doo. That's another one where the hook of that song, the chorus of that song, is just that part. The final countdown. I love how dramatic he is, too. He's really feeling it. They're called Europe, though, so he's got to embody a lot of emotions in one band, which I guess they did pretty well. So The Final Countdown's another one. That's just an instrument hook, okay? Which I always think about, like we do these rounds in Nashville, where you sit and you play the song and everybody wants to come hear the people that wrote the songs. And wouldn't it be amazing if whoever, I know Mark Knopfler wrote Dire Straits, but if he hadn't, or whoever wrote The Final Countdown, had to sit and do all that on a guitar. Like you're just sitting there for like 5 minutes listening, just single note. That made me laugh. So The Final Countdown's another one. Another one, Lowrider by War. Lowrider by War. It's a great song. That's another one where the hook is literally, the chorus is literally a that horn line. So those are the 3 that kind of, to me, there's a lot of other ones that tick the boxes, but I think most people know those songs. Three that are really close, but that barely miss the qualifier is My Sharona by the Knack. Bo go giggy go skid my Sharona do giddy go deet do deet do do deet do do deet. That's another one, but he does sing My Sharona, so it's going to sort of disqualified for me. Whiter Shade of Pale by Procol Harum. Procol Harum. I love this song. It's such a beautiful, beautiful song on the organ. Beautiful. But it's a little bit of a cheat because he does kind of have a chorus. And now we're walking, whatever that thing is. Beautiful, beautiful song. His voice is, skip the light fandango. What a great, great song. But really the hook of that song is that organ part, even though it's not technically. Who Can It Be Now by Men at Work is the greatest example of the close call, where it's a, can it be now, which is a terrible trumpet sound because it's on a sax. But those are all sort of like honorable mentions to me. But I do love that whole genre. I love that question. I think it's a great question, Drink 63, because I think that again is what I love about this podcast, is trying to find these anomalies in pop music. Like, these are songs that were big hits that where there wasn't a vocal really sung on choruses, which I think is so cool to see they pulled it off. Kudos to all those peeps. Hot take 3. So this one is fun. This is from my good friend Ben Hutto, and Ben asked a great question. When he asked, why does D'Angelo's song Untitled, in parentheses, how does it feel, make my face, how shall I say, stank? Now, if you don't know D'Angelo, let's stop there and just stop the podcast, go over and listen to really anything. But Voodoo, that album to me is class. It's a masterpiece. I mean, that album is incredible. So just start there. Spanish Joint is one of my top 20, 30 songs of all time. Questlove playing drums on that whole album, and I think helped produce it. So here's the deal with that song, though. So this song is in 6/8, so it's a boom, boom. So half of what you feel is just how much and how good Questlove and Pino Palladino, who's the bass player, who is in the the John Mayer trio, but has really played on everything in the world. He played on this record, the D'Angelo record. He played on, like I said, Mayer's last few records. He played on Paul Young's Every Time You Go Away, that song, that fretless part. Incredible bass player, and I think he played on that song when he was like in his teens. I mean, he's been around for forever. He's a European guy. He's a genius. I think he toured with The Who. He's a legend. He's a legend. Anybody that knows anything about music, especially bass players, ask him about Pino Palladino, and they'll tell you he's a genius. Tall, super skinny, tall white guy, which is why I think it's so funny he played on that record, because it's so nasty, and then you got this white, like, European bass player dude just holding it down. So here's what is so that I think is a huge part of it. Why does it make you have the stank face, Ben? One, because their feel is insane. It's also the genesis, in my opinion, my humble opinion. I'm not a R&B like scholar, but I think it's safe to say Jay Dilla had been around for a while then, and it influenced these guys a lot. Jay Dilla was a producer who died in 2006, I believe. Really young. I forget what he died from. It was sad. It was an illness he had. Genius producer, and really began this feel. And he was in Slum Village, made records with them. That's where you might know him from. But he sort of pioneered this sort of like shuffle / straight drum feel. So he would mash up these samples and turn them into where they kind of like, it wasn't straight. When you think of a straight groove, that would be beat it. And then a shuffle would be swung, right? He would make these drum grooves that sort of half swung straight. And it's impossible to explain, so I'm not going to try, but you can look up Jay Dilla. His album Donuts is a tutorial on how he did this, okay? So without getting into the minutia of all that. And it was the beginning of this, and those guys were listening to a lot of that. And if you listen to Questlove talk about it, you hear him say that. And I do think the way that they treat that 6/8 feel, Pino is laying so far back, he might as well be on the previous song. I mean, it's so far back. And so they're not pushing at all. So in other words, there's no urgency at all in this track. And so Pino and Questlove have locked the bass playing in and the bass drum in so that it just barely is getting there in time, which gives you this so much anticipation. Like you're just like, because if you're just playing it straight, it's boom, but they're boom. It just feels oh, you're like, yes, it's giving you what you need, but it's barely getting there, which I think is so cool. And to me, that Questlove's one of the goats. He's just, I guess that's not really the definition of goat, but you can't have many goats. But Questlove's a genius, and if you don't know, Questlove Supreme is one of the best podcasts of all time. But that rhythm section to me is why this song feels so good. Also, D'Angelo's crazy high, weird, laid back, sort of indistinguishable vocals. The whole thing just kind of gives you this soup of nastiness. This like, it's just wonderful, beautiful, and you just want to get a raft and lay in it forever. That's a weird way to end this, but it's a great song, and I think the feel can be attributed to really all those things.
Hot take 4.
On this next question, Lucas Pritz asks, on Shadow Days by John Mayer, please explain what's happening musically from 220 to 234-ish. Key change? Is it something chromatic? Send help. Sort of key change? And so here's what's happening. So John, the song is in D. I'm in D flat right now because I'm 2.5 step down. But so he's been in D the whole song. All these chords well. He suddenly, for the solo section, which is a really cool change, goes D augmented to B minor to E7. So here's what's happening though. Let me kind of break down what's happening. So he's going D, and then if a D augmented is where you take the 5 and you scoot the 5 up to a 5 sharp. So you go from 5 of that to 5 sharp. And then it kind of keeps walking up to a B minor, which is, and then E7. So it's a weird, it doesn't key change, but it sort of fools you into thinking it might key change because that B minor to a E7 is actually a 2-5 if you're going into E. I'm sorry, into A. Hello. So B minor to E would be how you get into A if you're going to do a key change, but John doesn't do that. He goes, and then just right back to D. So it's kind of a little pump fake. It's a little bit of like on you, which is really cool. And it's cool. And I love too that I think that's the only moment that happens in the song, and it makes for a really cool moment period. But it also makes for a really cool solo because you just haven't heard that, and then it gets back to the rest of the song. You're like, oh, that was a cool moment. So not only was the solo cool and new, but the actual bridge was new and cool too. And John does these all the time. He's so good. I mean, Room for Squares, one of the reasons it blew my mind was because there was just so much key change, weirdness, awesomeness that worked that I didn't have a clue you could even do. So it's not a surprise he does this because he's done it to great effect throughout his whole career.
Hot take 5.
So Bulk Fam asks this great question, and these are my dear friends, which makes it even more fun to answer. Why does Lady Antebellum have such perfect harmonies, and what's behind that? So I don't want to do like the deep dive on why harmonies sort of mathematically work, why certain notes match with certain notes, because that's a whole deeper thing that even I think I'd fall asleep trying to explain to you, much less you listening. But I will say this. I think on a very broad view, some of the magic of great bands that have really what we'd call a vocal blend, and that's just a blending of vocals. So in Lady A's case, that's Hillary, it's Charles, it's Dave. It's the 3 members of the band. And what makes a really magical vocal blend is how different vocals are, but when they come together, they form a new vocal. And this to me I was blown away. I went to go see Fleetwood Mac probably 5 or 6 years ago, and sitting there listening to them sing. This is back when the whole band, before they booted Lindsey Buckingham, which I'm still really sad about, maybe mad about. Is that vocal blend when you hear Fleetwood Mac all sing together? Rihanna, Rihanna, like Rihanna, those moments where everyone is singing at one time, that's not really one voice anymore. It becomes a new voice. So all those vocals blend together to form like a new voice. It's no longer Lindsey singing. It's sort of like the bulk of the band singing at one time. And when it's right, when you find this really cool vocal blend, it becomes a new thing. And it becomes a thing that is another voice in the band, and sometimes even more potent than the voices by themselves. And so when I think of Lady A and these bands like Fleetwood Mac that have not just men, but women in the band, which is a total different vocal timbre and color, they become so iconic when they work because it's not just Charles singing now, it's Charles, Dave, and Hillary. It's not just Hillary singing the lead vocal, it's Charles and Dave. And those 3 especially, and I'll speak especially Lady A, have very different vocals. I mean, if you know them at all and listen to their singing voices, Charles has got one of my favorite voices in the world, big, husky, strong voice. It's very, very guttural, very throaty, it's rough. Hillary is beautiful and sweet and gentle. Dave's is much more head voice. He's not as big of a chest voice as Charles is. So you almost have every version of a voice in a band. You have Dave, who's more of the head voice, Hillary, who's sweet, vocally, she's kind of both, and then Charles, who's very chest voice, and then they come together and it creates a new voice. It literally creates a new sound, a new color, because all three of them come together. And I think a lot of that obviously has to do with what notes you're picking to sing. So, are you singing the obvious harmonies of the 3 and the 5? Are you doing like a 6 that resolves to a 5? Which that's kind of, again, another bit of a deep dive. But I think any band that you love that has 2 or 3 singers, especially 3 singers in the band, you think of the Eagles, I think of like Doobie Brothers. There's a million of these that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. But I guarantee you if they've stuck around, it's because they probably have a vocal blend that's pretty iconic. And I think that's all that to say this. When I hear Lady A, when I heard Fleetwood Mac at that show, when they started to sing those songs, I didn't think this is Lindsay thinking. I thought, I know that's another voice that does something to me. It's like as much a part of their band as each of the single vocalists are. And I think that's really cool. And I think that's what makes their harmonies. What's up, man? You got them harmonies. Their harmonies so profound is it's no longer, they're just singing on top of each other. They're singing as one new blend. And that's really what makes these groups so profound and memorable and iconic, in my opinion. Before I go, a quick heads up here. If you like what you hear, there's a lot more to see on my socials. See what I did there? You can find me under @DaveBarnesMusic. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button or follow the podcast and rate if that's an option. Because a 5-star rating means my wife will finally let me audition for Space Jam 2. Still jammin'. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? I had a lot of fun. It is really fun to sort of get asked these questions that some I know the answer, a lot I don't know the answer, and then having to do the research to sort of figure out. And it's tricky too because there's that subjective, objective thing where some of them are just sort of like what you feel, and then some are very much empirical data, and so you have to answer them right, or someone sends you a mean tweet that says, "What are you doing with your life? You should go back to working at that diner." Okay, anyway, thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I hope you learned something. I know I did. I'll tell you one thing we didn't learn, and that's that the band Yes went by the name Probably for a while. Who knew, right? All right, we'll see you guys next time on
Dave's 5 Hot Takes. Yeah!